bolo baba bodima ambe wo kala nyarella Cheikh Faliyoro ibodo nebiye wari mogu mimbi bolo banki odo villa de la obedi de no mama mogo la dombaga ni bolo here kakamuke ndianye monka mundima ufo ndianye monka munkiye ndianye mana waranya doma mwekela jonle difa kamuke kone ye jonle ne ye wolo fanyu manka jonle kamuke ne ye jonle ne le wolo fanyu mala jonle kamundi ne ye jonle ne ye wolo de nila jonle ndianye mana waranya ne ye jonle kone ye furuge nyumala jonle
DJ Can Be.
we build stone houses. So it's colder inside the house than when you step out. So we enjoy and we're thankful for the sunshine. I want to thank my sign language interpreter who's going to be here throughout the day. And also for the people who are online, there's another sign language interpreter who will be able to bring you into the conversation. But I want to start with a question. Why are we here? And I won't ask you to turn to your neighbor, it's not church. But let me give my hypothesis as to why we are here. We are here because we're advocates, we're activists, we are protectors and researchers, we are knowledge keepers and knowledge seekers. We are people who are held together by a deep, deep appreciation, respect, and love for the embedded power of our histories. We have love because we know how deep the sacrifices that have been made for the histories that we enjoy today. And we know that our culture and our heritage is really the beacon of our identity. And it moves us silently, implicitly, whether we like it or not. It's what determines our very Kenyan selves. Today, we stand in the sands of our past, but we're actively creating the clouds of the future. And speaking of clouds, that's what brings us here, right? Like bits and bytes, because we are living also in a digital world, which is moving at a pace that we have never seen as the human race. But we are intentionally making sure that we can try and keep up. So that's the thread of interest that brings us here. Am I correct? Is my hypothesis true, do you think? Thank you, thank you. I like the people here in this corner, they're like, yes, yeah. So that's the interest of what brings us here. But operationally, we were invited by the British Council that hosts bilateral cultural relations programs which are jointly created with partners in the UK and a partner country. This year, in collaboration with the partners in Kenya, we have the UK-Kenya season, which is a program of activities that celebrates creativity, innovation in the arts, culture, heritage, and tradition and education sectors. It was launched in May. How many people were at the launch at the British Council? That's why you're excited. You're like, yes, yeah. We have a few people who were here at the launch. But the most important thing is that the season doesn't end until November. So there's still a lot of opportunity for you to get ingrained, engaged, deepened, and connected through the UK-Kenya season. Our partner for this season is the British High Commission, and it is funded by the Cultural Protection Fund, which is the United Kingdom's main response to ensuring that international cultural heritage is protected and safeguarded, especially when it comes to some of the risks around conflict, around climate change, to make sure that we still have the things which were gifted to us from times gone by. And I'd like you to find out more about the Cultural Protection Fund in the courtyard. Of course, we have our host, the National Museums of Kenya, and I'm sure you've seen all the kids. How many people had flashbacks of coming to the museum in uniform? Yeah, and you're like, wow, that elephant is big, and then you're like, oh, it's not real, thank goodness. Yeah. We're also indebted to UNESCO, which is our knowledge partner for this symposium. And with that, I would like to welcome you all to the Culture Grows Symposium, which is a key event of this UK-Kenya season 2025. We're glad that you're here both physically. For the people online, imagine it's full here, but we know that there's people online as well. And we encourage you, like I said, to continue engaging with the season all the way until November. Can I give some housekeeping announcements? Yeah? Okay. So we have washrooms, well, not washrooms. We have portable toilets on the end, just near the entrance, which are solely for our use, because we know that there's a lot of competition for the museum's facilities. I want you to be aware of your surroundings and make sure that, if there's need for an emergency departure, we will go out this way, the way that we came. If you go out this way, you're getting deeper and deeper into the museum. But we will hope that we do not need to leave in a hurry. We have our partner, Good Times Africa, who are working with a team of ushers to help you navigate the building's amenities for any persons with disability who might require assistance. So please, is there someone from Good Times Africa who can make themselves known? They can put up their hand. Okay, maybe they're helping at the front. And then I wanted to remind us about the photography and videography disclaimer, which is on the signs all around. And essentially that means that by virtue of being here and signing up and registering, you're part of our photography and video engagement, right? So as we pan to the audience, please know that. If you are adamant about not being filmed, please make that known to the team that is at the back. Lastly, because this is a digital, this is an event that honors the digital. Our program is, we'll have the QR code shown just now, but our program is online and people will be able to download that and keep it in your phone and make sure that you're following ahead with us. And then we have hashtags. Who are the people who are keyboard warriors or thumb warriors? Are you here? What are Instagram? What are Twitter? Because I'm still on Twitter. Yes. Our hashtag is hashtag culture grows and hashtag culture grows 2025. So please make sure that you're making sure that you're, I don't want to say Xing, but tweeting, because that's a much easier word. Make sure that you're live on your preferred Instagram handle or your preferred social media handle, and making sure that people know that this event is happening, right? Because that's how we all grow together. And finally, if you want to follow the East Africa Arts program on Instagram, it's at East Africa Arts, which is one word. And with that, I have now finished my housekeeping. So can we get on to the program? Yeah. Thank you. So I would like to invite my first speaker, who is one of the curators of this event, Professor Kimani Njogu. He's the director of Twaweza Communications, which is an arts, culture, and media organization here in Nairobi. He's also the chair of the Creative Economy Working Group, right? So when it comes to policy around creatives and our creative sector, he's the person to talk to. And the other thing is that because he's a linguist, Swahili ndio lugha yake. Yes, karibu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mwihaki. Hamjambo. For those of you who are not East Africans, please do learn at least 2 words in Swahili. So, hamjambo, the response is hatujambo, okay? It's plural. And when it's hujambo, you say si jambo. So, but of course, if you want to be real kind of marginal, you can say jambo and get away with it. So, Your Excellency Neil Wigan, the UK High Commissioner to Kenya, Your Excellency Madam Ruth McKenzie, Director of Arts at British Council, Madam Umi Bashir, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Arts and Heritage, Professor Mary Gikungu, the Director General, National Museums of Kenya, who really are our hosts. Can we give them a clap for really fantastic facility we have? And I really want to encourage you to take advantage of your presence here to enjoy the museum. They have fantastic exhibitions, fantastic shujas, all sorts of things in this space, okay? So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, hamjambo. Fantastic. So our institution, Twaweza Communications, has been privileged to work in partnership with the British Council in conceptualizing at least and delivering together at least 3 symposia on cultural heritage with key stakeholders here at the National Museums of Kenya. And in these conversations, we have had the opportunity to talk about policy, capacity development, the opportunities for young people in heritage work, and so forth, as well as the critical role of global partnership in cultural heritage work. The theme this year is really apt. Cultural heritage enables and drives community action, and especially when you look at digital technologies, which continue to provide opportunities for the preservation and sharing of heritage across generations and geographies. And one can say that technologies are revolutionizing the ways in which we imagine, conceptualize, and preserve and disseminate, our cultures. But of course, there are significant challenges related to accessibility, intellectual property rights, community rights, and so on, including, of course, financing of the heritage work. So we believe that in the course of this symposia, we'll be able to discuss some of these issues. I want to recognize the presence of students. Tuna wanafunzi huku? We have students in the room? Yeah. I want to recognize your presence because really this work is critical for you going forward. You know, take time to learn, take time to interact, take time to network with people in the sector. With those very, very many remarks, I want to say thank you very much for coming, and do enjoy the symposium. It's for all of us. Take the opportunity to learn, to share, to experience it. Back to you, Mwihaki. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. You made me also realize I forgot to introduce myself. Wamajina. My name is Mwihaki Muraguri, and I will be your MC for today. And like you, I love the ideas that culture and heritage bring to us. Madam Ruth McKenzie is our next speaker. She's the Director for Arts at the British Council, but she has served in this role of Artistic Director for many, many institutions and festivals, including during the 2012 London Olympic Games, making sure that along the Games there was the Cultural Olympiad. But that's not all. She's worked in the Netherlands, she's worked curating other festivals in the UK, and also in Australia. So, Madam Ruth, please, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm so thrilled to be part of the Kenya season and part of this symposium, which is one of the highlights of the Kenya season. We're here today with speakers and case studies from 16 countries around the world, and of course, with a digital audience, there'll be people from many more countries around the world that are tuning in and learning and sharing with us these important stories. And this Kenya season, I think, has been one of the most exciting seasons the British Council have seen and worked on, together with the teams here who lead and the other teams in London. And not only because of the work, the great work of Kenya artists and creatives, which you can see here, as you've heard, until November, but you can also see them if you're listening and tuning in from the UK, and indeed for tourists and people from around the world at Venice, at the Biennale, which is celebrating architecture this year. There is one of the best contributions that we have seen in the history of the British Pavilion in Venice, which is a takeover, in effect, a co-creation by Kenyan artists, creatives and architects, working alongside British team members for 3 years to come up with something that tells Kenyan stories in the heart of Venice. It's won the second prize of the most prestigious arts festival in the world, and we should celebrate that achievement. I thank you all. So, just as in Venice, they are digging in, these people who've come from around the world to Venice, they are digging in and discovering the stories that come from the heritage, the country, the roots of Kenya and Kenyan people. So we today are looking at some of the important cases and ways in which we can protect heritage with the help of the Cultural Protection Fund, whose work you can see, as you've heard, up in the courtyard. And the important thing for all of us is that that model of co-design, of co-care, of working on important heritage sites with community members, of empowering and upskilling community members to help us preserve heritage that is vital, a vital part of their community and their history, but also heritage that we, all of us, share. I learnt yesterday about this wonderful project, which you will know about, on Lake Turkana, which is a 1.5 million year old footprints, hominid footprints, from your ancestors, from all of our ancestors, 1.5 million years. That's right at the start of human heritage and culture. And such an extraordinary thing that the British Council, with the help of the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in the UK, has been proud to work with you to preserve those footprints so that everyone, all our descendants, can enjoy and understand and share in the journey that those footprints started. It's a great, great achievement, I think, to be able to ensure that thanks to the local communities, now this can be a tourist place, but most important, a place where the community themselves can be reminded of their heritage. We learnt yesterday in the opening, and thanks to Mo Kubai, of course, heritage, which for many of us we think of as being just the past, but heritage is a living memory, and it's our duty to make sure that that memory stays alive. And that's where the second focus of this conference is so important, which is that we are in a digital age, and that we now have tools where we can help not just to preserve physical heritage, but most particularly, I feel, to preserve intangible heritage. So that's the heritage that exists only in the minds of people, that is handed down to us from our descendants. It's our traditional dances, it's our music, it's the ways in which we communicate through art and through culture, which is the central motorway, if you like, of what makes us a community, what makes our culture and our identity. And now we have a way to use digital tools to help artists and creatives and community members to preserve and to continue the growth of our culture. The British Council published a fantastic report, which you'll find online, which is called Why Technology Needs Artists. And it's a series of essays by technology leaders, tech leaders, artists, creatives, that give us, I think, some good ideas. Of course, we're going to be talking over the next few days about the threat of AI, the threats that digitization poses. But I want us to remember that every threat is also an opportunity, and that if we come together and if we trust our own expertise, the expertise of all of you in this room, the expertise of culture leaders, heritage leaders, artists and creatives and community leaders, we're going to find creative solutions which digitization and digital tools can use to save our languages, to save our living heritage, both the physical heritage and the intangible heritage. So thank you so much for today, and I'm delighted now to hand over to Your Excellencies.
So, Hamjambo. Did I get it right? The prof said it was okay, then I'm in a good place. Karibuni Sana, welcome to everybody here in the room and online as well to this really important and exciting event. And it's really great to see so many people here today. As Mohaki said, this is part of the Kenya-UK season, where we're trying to do collaboration across the whole range of arts, of creativity, of culture between Britain and the UK. And we selected Kenya from amongst all the countries in the world because it has such a lively, such a vibrant arts, creative community, and that's what we see here today. And that's been proved through the season, through the architecture at Venice, which we talked about, through the Nairobi Book Festival, held here just a few months ago, but through fun things like music, dance, acting, drama, and much more. And I really do encourage you, please get involved, get engaged in the program, which carries up until November. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the people at the British Council who've worked incredibly hard on building that festival to life. So if I could embarrass them by asking Tom Porter, Sandra Cheggy and Makami Kuino to stand up and to get a round of applause. They've worked incredibly hard to bring events like this to life. And for today, I'd like to thank as well the National Museums, but also the PS as well, who has supported us all the way through this program. And I think if we can give them a round of applause as well. So I've talked about culture, I've talked about arts, I've talked about creativity, but we very much wanted culture and heritage to be at the heart of the program, and that's why we're here today. because as you all know much better than me, the vibrancy, the energy of Kenya's creative scene today, that's because of the cultures, the heritages, the tradition that you have, and how you bring them to life in our cultural work today. And that's very much what we're trying to do here at the season. That's part of much broader work that we're trying to do on cultural protection. Ruth talked about the Cultural Protection Fund, which is a worldwide program between the British government and the British Council. It operates in, I think, about 20 countries with 56 projects. But it's really lively here in East Africa, where we've spent about £8 million on cultural protection in recent years. And here in Kenya, in the last round, we had more bids, more expressions of interest than we did from anywhere else in the whole world. And I think that says something about the energy that we have here in Kenya. So I think you should all give yourselves a round of applause now. I should say as well that we talk about the positives of culture, but we know that for us, Britain here in Kenya, there are difficult aspects as well. And we're trying to talk about those much more openly and much more honestly, maybe, than we have done in the past. So in December, the PS and I were here at the National Museum, where I handed over to President Ruto British archives of the most sensitive sources, the most difficult issues, intelligence reports, political reports, and others from Kenya's independence struggle, so that Kenyan researchers here in Kenya at the National Archives can access those and use those to keep telling Kenya's story here today. But on cultural protection, there's a risk that sometimes culture and heritage appeals to old people like me. And I'm very glad to say I feel very old today, surrounded by young people. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring young people, we wanted to bring technology, and to make this much more vibrant. As it's really important that culture and heritage isn't something that we remember from our grandparents, but something that the current generation interprets and does differently today. And as Ruth says, that we use new technologies to tell old stories in different ways, and we keep these traditions alive. And with a professor just before, I was talking about the work he's doing with the Bajuni community, which I saw for myself when I was down in Mombasa recently, of a culture which has an amazing richness of stories, of culture, of songs, of poetry, but is under threat, as I saw for myself when I was in Somalia for 2 years. But through technology, through programs like this, we're helping to keep that tradition alive, make it part of education, and make it part of the younger generation. So I wish you all well today. We want to use today to build bridges, to build culture, to bring British and Kenyan ideas together, to get the most out of them, and we hope you all have a great day doing that. Thank you all very much. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce the Principal Secretary, who's been a huge advocate and fan of this project, P.S. Bashir.
Hamjambo. How is everybody doing today? Thank you so much, Your Excellency Neil, High Commissioner of the United Kingdom. I'd also like to take this opportunity to also acknowledge the Director of Arts at the British Council, Ruth McKenzie, CBE. Special thanks goes to Tom Porter, and Sandra Chege. You guys have done a brilliant work in actualizing this dream of collaboration on matters culture, matters our heritage, in conjunction with the British Council. Also present with us today is the Director General for the National Museums of Kenya, Professor Mary Gikungu. Asante sana. That is the boss here at the National Museums of Kenya. And we have Professor Kimani Njogu, who is a linguist and a renowned scholar, and also the Executive Director of Twaweza Communications. I'd also like to recognize my Director Culture, Dr. Lagat, who is here with us. Also present is the CEO for Kenya Cultural Center, Pundo, Pale Theatre, if you guys want to go perform your art there, he's the one to go to. Your Excellencies and all the creatives present, students, the young guys in our country, hamjambo. So I'm very delighted to join you this morning as we officially open the Culture Grows Symposium 2025, convened under the theme Heritage in the Digital Age, an exploration of indigenous knowledge and also technology. This is especially relevant as we convene at Kenya's foremost arsenal of historic and prehistoric artifacts, that is our National Museums of Kenya. Indeed, Kenya is the home of innovation following the discovery of early human technology, dated almost 3 million years in the Turkana Basin, that is the northern part of our country. Thus, holding this symposium here amplifies Kenya's role in technological innovations. We say Kenya is the home of human origins. Do you believe that? Yes. Do you believe that? Yes. Great. I strongly believe that Kenya is the home of human origins. We'd say the cradle of humankind, but to be more original, we went for home of human origins. You need to visit Turkana. You need to see the footprints that Ruth was talking about in Ileret, almost at the border of Ethiopia and Kenya on the Turkana side. You'll find massive footprints that go for generations, 1.5 years ago. This is the kind of heritage that we have as assets in this country, and we have to be proud of that. Culture and heritage seems to be pushed towards an archaic or a boring corner in our history. But I beg to differ. We are here to make culture cool again. Sindio? Sindio? If we don't make culture cool again, then we don't expect anyone from outside our borders to make culture cool again. So it's for us, this generation, us young guys, to make sure that we make culture cool again, tell our stories differently, as we would want our stories to be told as Kenyans. I note with pride that the symposium is part of the United Kingdom Kenya season, which is running between May and November 2025. This year's season celebrates creativity and innovation through the arts, culture, and education links between England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Kenya in 2025. Season activities happening in Kenya and the United Kingdom are showcasing work ranging from architecture, design, fashion, literature, music, visual arts, performing arts, and also film. Further, I would like to welcome our international audiences to the symposium. We have teams from the UK, South Africa, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Rwanda, Uganda, Netherlands, Nepal, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Pakistan, and Vietnam that have flown in, as well as those attending sessions being broadcast online. We have virtual going on. I note that this is a 4-day hybrid event, and it's happening parallel in 3 different cities, that is Nairobi, Lagos, and Nairobi, Lagos, London at the African Center. We are excited about gathering artists, creative practitioners, cultural organizations, and interested audiences to share experiences and insights through different workshops. The 2025 edition of the Culture Grows Symposium will address the following questions. 1, how is artificial intelligence engaging with cultural heritage, and to what effect, to what extent, right? Which ethical conditions should guide digital technologies in Africa. The second question would be, how can platform owners and practitioners in the cultural and creative industries work together to protect and amplify community rights, voices, and perspectives while maximizing on opportunities offered by digital technologies? The third question would be, what type of cultural heritage and digital technology policies and regulations do we need or are necessary to harness indigenous knowledge and ensure inclusive growth? The fourth one would be, how can international cooperation support community-driven grassroots projects and also contribute to the revitalization of intangible traditions and inspire new generations? How are practitioners in fashion, music, film, utilizing digital platforms to create and also to distribute their products? And finally, how are the technologies utilized for documentation and information sharing and management recreated outdoor, recreation of and outdoor virtual experiences, also audience development for cultural heritage? So, my dear friends, as we unpack these domains, it is clear that the world of business as we know it today is slowly ceasing to exist in favor of working with digital aids in the creative space. As Nobel Peace Prize winner Geoffrey Hinton notes, AI is advancing faster than we expect. In this forum, we will unpack how this affects arts, culture, and also our heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, culture is not only a mirror of our societies, it is the backbone of our foundation. It is the fabric of our identity and our existence as a people. It is also a vital driver of transformation, cohesion, and also development. It is through culture that identities are forged, creativity is nurtured, and also innovation responses to collaborative and contemporary challenges are shaped. Culture connects us to our past. And as His Excellency, the Ambassador just said, High Commissioner said, that culture and heritage is not only our past. Ruth also mentioned it. It's not only about our past. It is our day-to-day. It's the stories we write for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and the pride that we have as a people, as a nation, and the history and assets that we have. So culture connects us to our past and also guides our future, underpinning social, economic, and environmental well-being. The government of Kenya is committed to creating an enabling environment, okay, for cultural and creative industries. Recently, we have seen marked support for AI deployment in all sectors through the National AI Strategy 2025-2030, anchored on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which prioritizes empowerment of communities at the grassroots levels and also positions culture as an engine of job creation and sustainable livelihoods. Digital technology-powered design, music videos, and also storytelling tools empower artists, musicians, and writers to create professional content without needing expensive equipment or formal training. This lowers barriers to entry for youth and also rural creatives, because we have creatives all across our nations, from Mandera, Turkana, Lamu, across. And this helps them to launch their businesses, brands, and also creative products. AI can be deployed to curate hyper-personalized cultural content that's filmed in fashion, cuisines, our food, our gastronomy, and also our heritage. Platforms that we use and we can encourage our youth to use are Spotify, of course, YouTube, Netflix, and helping the niche creators find global audiences. This boosts visibility and income for local artists, artisans, and also designers. Digital technologies can also be used to archive, digitize, revitalize indigenous language and also traditions. Our languages, Kiswahili chetu, lugha yetu ya mama, zinapotea. So what do we do? What can we do as creatives to ensure that our mother tongue does not disappear? Like my kids, talking to them in Somali is drama. Is drama. I talk to these kids in Somali and they look at me like I'm talking Greek. So how do we change this notion that it's cool to speak in English, but it's not cool to speak in Kikuyu or Luo, Kijaluo, or Kiswahili, or Kimasai? You're getting the drift. Like, how do we make it cool again? That if I speak to my kid in Kiswahili, he'll not feel like, madhe uko down. Unajua? Aujaiva. So what can we do, especially coming from our creatives? How do we make it a normal thing to speak in our languages and in our local dialect, in eating, mutura, matumbo, omena, anjera, and feel cool about it? Cool is not about pizza only and, burgers and all that. Part of our cultures and our heritage is also our gastronomy. When tourists come to our nation, they want to experience our cuisines. They want to taste ugali, right? Right? But us guys, we want to eat pizza and, fries and, burgers and, be cool. It's not bad. I mean, I love pizza. But integrate it with our own, homegrown foods. Mahindi choma, nyama choma, you can make it cool. And we don't have to wait for guys from outside to make it cool for us. We're the ones who will make it cool again. With these trends, I expect digital technologies to be embraced not just as a tech tool, but as a powerful equalizer, helping entrepreneurs, especially women and emerging creatives, turn culture into capital, especially when combined with supportive policy, education, and equitable digital access. I wish to conclude with a few words from the late Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Our heritage is not a museum piece. It is the living soul of our people. Let us rise to this moment. Let us harness technology to breathe life, new life into our culture and heritage and ensure that they thrive across borders and generations. I want to also take this opportunity to thank the British Council once again for this amazing, amazing symposium. And Kenya is very lucky to be the chosen one this year. And we hope for more collaborations with the United Kingdom and also the British Council. We can do so much together, Tom, Sandra, Your Excellency Neil, Ruth. Let's see how we can work together to make our youth shine, to make our creatives come out proudly and confidently and nurture the talent that they have. It is with these few remarks that I declare this symposium officially opened. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam PS. As you heard, our heritage and our culture is not static. It's happening real time. So literally, Smoky Pasua is part of our culture and it's part of our heritage, right? I love what she said about the activity that's happening in the creative economy and how we can also, and how the creative economy is an opportunity for young Kenyans, for all Kenyans actually, and is a live, living economic opportunity, right? All those graffiti artists who paint on matatus, are they not part of the creative economy? Yeah? All the people who make fashionable outfits, are they not part of the creative economy? And can we stop calling them maifundi? No, they are bespoke tailors. Do you know to get a handmade, a stitched item in the northern hemisphere is a very expensive thing. right? But the way that we value is the way that things are going to become. Sorry, the names that we put on things shows the value that we hold for them. And with that, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Caroline Mose. She's a governance and cultural studies expert, and she's also a researcher, a writer, an academic, and a public intellectual dedicated to documenting current issues, including most recently on the Kenyan Gen Z protests. She serves on the editorial board of Jahazi Journal of Arts, Culture, and Performance, and is also a creative writer herself. Karibu, Dr. Caroline.
Good morning. So we'll start with the protocols. Their Excellencies, Neil Wigan, with the UK Commissioner to Kenya, and Ruth McKenzie, Director of Arts at the British Council in the UK. Mheshimiwa Umi Bashir, who has just declared this symposium open. Professor Mary Gikungu, who is the Director General of the National Museums of Kenya. Professor Kimani Njogu, who is the Executive Director of Twaweza Communications, the Twaweza Communications team, the British Council here in Kenya, the team, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocols observed. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am, of course, absolutely honored and delighted to stand here before all of you to deliver this keynote. Now, if you look at the program, the title of my speech felt a little bit of a mouthful. And I tried to shorten it, and I don't know if I succeeded, but I titled this Digital Technologies and Preservation and Sharing of Cultural Heritage, Challenges and Opportunities. As you've seen in my introduction, I do wear many hats, and I am going to start with my storytelling one. So I'm going to do a series of stories. And we know that in our African tradition, stories are communal, right? So when I say hadithi, for those of us who are here and you're not Kenyan or you don't speak Kiswahili, I've put the cue up there. Every time you see that cue, just know I'm going to say hadithi, and you say? Okay. So I'll start with my first story. Once upon a time in the highlands of Narok, on 16th of October 1946, stood a man named Karambu Olesenteu, who was the grandson of the famed Masai Olaibon Batiany, whose name sits proudly at the highest peak of Mount Kenya at 5199 meters above sea level. Karambu Olesenteu was named after one of Olaibon's sons, whose younger brother Olonana sits with his name at the third highest peak of Mount Kenya, which you will all know as Point Lenana. Karambu stood, chest heaving, adrenaline pumping, on the verge of flight. About 50 feet from him lay District Commissioner Hugh Grant, not to be confused with the actor, of course. DC Hugh Grant lay dead. Karambu had just sent a flying spear right through him for taking his prized bull as heart tax. Watching this bloody drama was Mzee Kasi Selempo, who was the DC's driver. Mzee Selempo would turn out to be my own great-grandfather. And he stood here captured in this historic tableau. Mzee is late, of course, as is my grandfather, Mzee John Tiampati, who married Selempo's daughter, Dorothy Naisingoi, who is also late, my grandmother. So why is this story that I'm telling you important? We'll come back to this shortly. It has always been imperative to curate and preserve culture for it to be passed down the generations, and more so today with so much exponential progress and change. I'll start. I said I wear many hats. I also love numbers, and I'm going to throw some at you. In the last 111 years, the world has experienced 2 world wars, the Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Union, globalization, and emerging new technologies, including the mobile phone some of you are holding in your hands. And of course, it's now infamous 5-second concentration span of Homo sapiens sapien, i.e., all of us seated here. On the continent, in the last 141 years, we have witnessed the advent of colonialism since the Berlin Conference of 1884 to the current Africa we now know with its socio-political and cultural histories. But what lies before 1884? The British explorer Henry Morton Stanley, who is famous for his inland trek across Central and Eastern Africa, looking for David Livingstone, dubbed Africa the Dark Continent. While the German philosopher George Hegel opined that, and I quote, "Africa is no historical part of the world. It has no movement or development to exhibit." And in 1963, famous British historian Hugh Trevor Roper infamously stated, and I quote, "Perhaps in the future there will be some African history to teach, but at present there is none. Only the history of Europeans in Africa. The rest is darkness." Views like these and others cemented the popular dark continent tropes, including in popular imagination and culture. Among them, books such as Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, Wilbur Smith's body of literary work detailing the movements of white characters across an interestingly wild, vast land with very few native peoples, if at all, a land waiting to be tamed and occupied, which of course were echoes of Cecil Rhodes and his infamous and exploitative Cape to Cairo Railroad. All these loud narratives stifled the more astute accounts, such as British journalist and historian Basil Davidson's Old Africa Rediscovered and Lost Cities of Africa, both of which were published in the late 1950s, which explored Africa's advanced civilization before the arrival of the Europeans. But even Davidson's accounts fall short of the glory of ancient Africa. Hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi, hadithi. I'll tell you another story. In 1691, the Portuguese ship captain Lourenço Pinto observed, and I quote, "Great Benin, where the king resides, is larger than Lisbon. All the streets run straight as far as the eye can see. The houses are large, especially that of the king, which is richly decorated and has fine columns. The city is wealthy and industrious. It is so well governed that theft is unknown, and the people live in such security that they have no doors to their houses." Mathematician Ron Eglash, author of African Fractals, which examines the patterns underpinning architecture, art, and design in many parts of Africa, said that Benin City and its surrounding villages were purposely laid out to form perfect fractals, mathematically predictable patterns. When Europeans first came to Africa, they considered, I'm quoting him, they considered the architecture very disorganized and thus primitive. It never occurred to them that Africans might have been using a form of mathematics that they hadn't even discovered yet. 17th century Dutch visitor Olfert Dapper said this of Benin City, and I quote, "Adorned with gables and steps, they are usually broad with long galleries inside, especially so in the case of the houses of the nobility, and divided into many rooms which are separated by walls made of red clay, very well erected. The upper floors are made of some sort of clay. Moreover, every house is provided with a well for the supply of fresh water." Talk about, this was the original benchmarking trip, eh? By all accounts, everyday life in Benin City, heart of the great empire of Benin, was filled with people in colorful dresses, conducting business and living sophisticated, complicated lives. A far cry from the erased native, whose language, as colonial law has had us believe, was purely oral, even guttural, rarely written, and lives so simple to the point of infantility, Africans walking around with no clothing and living in simple huts made of mud, or sometimes out in the wild like animals. The decline of Benin City began in the 15th century, sparked by internal conflicts linked to the increasing European intrusion and slave trade at the borders of the Benin Empire. Then in 1897, this is just a few years after the Berlin Conference, the city was destroyed by British soldiers, looted, blown up, and burnt to the ground. Other literature speaks of ancient kingdoms: Aksum, Kush, Mosi, Shongai, Twa, Nok, Akan, of great libraries in ancient cities such as Timbuktu. This literature points to the realities of a rich pre-colonial Africa filled with culture and cultural heritage, artifacts, antiquities, writings, literatures, musics, histories of our people before the European civilizing mission of colonialism, which commenced by the erasure and destruction of sophisticated African civilizations that already existed. So the civilizing mission was nothing but the extension of empire, and with it, pillaging the continent's resources, which is still ongoing to date, we have to admit, and which includes we the people. Hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi, hadithi. So now that we have established a rich, sophisticated history and culture before the white man in Africa, where do we go next in terms of preservation of our cultural heritage? And more so now in the age of artificial intelligence, online communities, technological advancement, and virtual reality. I started with the first question, my own personal history, and why that and that of everyone sitting here is important. One answer is that the holders of these histories, personal stories of the events that have shaped ourselves in the last 100 years, are now mostly, if not all, passed on. We are daily losing the luxury of fireside stories in Ushago with our grandparents, and we are beginning to convene around the cold upcountry graves of our parents. And we are hit by personal panic that our stories, which are not in their museums or somewhere in an obscure internet archive, are getting lost. Soon we will have nothing to pass on to our children. Not to mention grandchildren, the Gen Betas, who are being born starting now in 2025, and who will be the first generation to see the 22nd century, and for whom we must ask, what will we leave them? And slowly we are losing physical sites where some modicum of our cultural lives is curated and stored. The Bomas of Kenya is an example. But even these sites, including museums, continue to be colonial and extensions of colonial archives. Many of us will remember the iconic opening scenes of the first Black Panther film and the exchange between the museum attendants when she says, "These items are not for sale." And the character Eric Killmonger responds and says, "How do you think your ancestors got these? Do you think they paid a fair price? Or did they take it like they took everything else?" But increasingly, these sites are also sites of geopolitical wars. A recent Twitter thread recounted how the Omani government renovated the Lamu Museum, but replaced most of the local artifacts with Omani propaganda, relegating the local history of the people of Lamu to the dank basements, hidden, erased, silenced. So now we are faced with a new set of questions. What are we curating and preserving? Are we repatriating looted cultural goods in their totality to be preserved here? And what goods are those? Are they only those framed after colonialism, which scholars Terence Ranger and Valentine Mudimbe would call invented traditions? What erased or distorted stories do these objects represent, seeing as our elders with the last living memory of the age are slowly fading away? Where do we find the roots of our histories, our stories, and cultures before the Europeans? And even within our own collections and community-based museums and sites of preservation, these questions must persist, and they do persist, including in our online and digital spaces. And even now, in the present day, as we grapple with these questions and try to forge answers, we're faced with a vast array of technological tools which pose more concerns. Whose tools are these? Do the creators of content own it? What happens, for example, if your YouTube or TikTok account gets taken down? Are we supportive of the building of our own tools? What are the inherent risks of, for example, the digitization of our current collections here at the National Museums of Kenya through partnerships with the blue chips of the tech world? Who owns these digital collections? And what are the long-term implications of these partnerships? Are we perhaps naive to imagine that they're mainly fueled by altruism? What are our governments supporting collectively at the AU level, for example, regionally and at home? The AU in 2023 launched the temporary site for the Great Museum of Africa in Algiers. What is the status of this project, and how does it plan to transcend our respective colonial borders, regions, and languages, as well as navigate new technological advancements? Who is the GMA for? That is the Great Museum of Africa. Who is it for exactly? When it is physically to be situated in a country with extremely restrictive visa regimes for Black Africans south of the Sahara. Looking ahead, are we funding and supporting the development and use of homegrown AI and virtual reality in preserving culture? I am reminded of a virtual reality project by Dr. Melissa Alela, who is using it to convey the myths and legends of the Luo community, including the story of the great warrior and leader Luanda Magere. Do we support similar initiatives both within the premise of the national museums and outside of it? The story of recent ancestor Karambu Ole Senteu is not curated and preserved anywhere. Where are the stories of the other Karambus, whose remains, stories, weaponry are all lost somewhere in private collections in the West, some of which we covered in the Jahazi Journal, Volume 10 of 2022, which we named Reclaiming Our Cultural Heritage. Hadithi, hadithi? Hadithi, hadithi. Onwards to another story. During the 2024 Gen Z protests against the then finance bill, a number of initiatives to translate the bill into vernacular languages emerged centered around TikTok, which now leads me to a new set of challenges and opportunities, specifically around the use of social media sites and technological tools as sites of cultural preservation and sharing. First, I've already alluded to the issues of ownership on these platforms. Second is that of participation, similar to the Gen Z organizing around the 2024 finance bill. Are we thinking about community models of co-curation and co-preservation? Or are we still maintaining the top-down approaches to these ventures? Does the National Museums of Kenya have capacities to preserve all cultural artifacts from the past? For instance, the answer to that, in my view, would be no. So if co-curation efforts are deliberate and decentralized, how is this being communicated and done, and who by? And how do we make community curation and preservation a project of veracity so that what we are curating is accurate to the point that accuracy and truth, of course, can be adjudged? Third is partnerships with already existing ventures in digital archiving. Is there, for instance, partnerships with Nemayana, the National Museum of Science and Technology, to curate scientific advancements from antiquity to the present, including the fractal science and math of the walls of ancient Benin City I have mentioned here? Are there any partnerships with African digital heritage? Are there any partnerships with historians, podcasters, and storytellers, such as myself and many others? Opportunities exist to decentralize curation and preservation, including curating of ancient literature, cultural norms across all different ethnic communities, education and pedagogy, including ancient wisdoms, or what is now termed as indigenous knowledge, ancient political systems, including community policing, which would be a pertinent conversation from the recent escalations of violence we have seen on our streets by our deeply colonial police force. This leads to a fourth question around curating modern history. We did recently see young social media users expressing surprise that the Honorable James Orengo was once a political firebrand that took to the streets in his heyday, when a photo of the first Sub-Saharan was shared. Who is curating modern history, modern art, modern music, modern culture, including Matatu culture, beyond academic papers and books? Do we have an accessible and well-known archive or a museum of modern culture in the fashion of existing museums of modern art? And are we partnering with schools and related policymakers to ensure our curricula hold space for our children, who we now refer to as learners? Maybe a little bit, it's a problematic framing, but we now call them learners, to actually assimilate our ancient and modern histories in their totality, especially in the school curriculum, CBC. And lastly, which gaze are we pandering to in our quest to curate and preserve our cultures, stories, and histories? For example, I'm quoting this title, Painting on Rock of Bushmen exhibit on display in the Pitt Rivers online collection is titled thus, and provenance notes state that these were from an 1884 collection from the Cape of Good Hope. Which Bushmen? Where from? Who painted it and why? What was the context? Note that even Cape of Good Hope itself has completely been erased from its own native origins as far back as 600 AD, only connected to purported explorers of antiquity, never the native dweller, who is simply relegated to Bushmen. Thousands of artifacts, objects, and photographs are relegated in this manner in collections abroad and at home. On Google Arts and Culture, for example, if you tour the National Archive, you will spot, for example, photo of Maasai headdress used when hunting lions. A problematic framing, as it only panders to the exotification and orientalism of the Maasai as lion-killing pastoralists, a dark Africa trope without giving any further context. Who then are we curating these for in the digital space? What is the purpose of curating and preserving if the context were already lost at the first point of contact with the white gaze, and further when rendering them to a virtual medium? The headdress I'm talking about is right there on your screen, and the one on the right was actually sold in an online sale for $900. Which gaze are we pandering to? As I conclude, I leave us with these reflections and hadiths. Currently, many of our artifacts, stories, objects, histories are either still stuck in museums, archives, or private collections abroad. And the process of repatriation is still slow, uncoordinated, obscure, and chaotic at best, only serving to further the misconceptions around the dark continent's inability to perform excellence in restoring and preserving our own stuff. And here I will branch off and give you another story. Apparently, there are some artifacts were being repatriated, and when they arrived, I don't know if it was the port of Mombasa or in Nairobi, they were being charged import tax. And of course, the person receiving them could not pay for import. These are not imports. They are objects being repatriated. And so because of that debacle, there was no money, and that back and forth, these items were returned where they came from. So that's why I'm saying it's chaotic at best. And here I must commend the work of Restitution Africa, which reports that of the more than 1 million artifacts in the West, less than 1,000 have been returned. We need more coordinated pressure around this. Bring back our stuff is the hashtag. Currently, the process of digitizing our available artifacts, stories, objects in our own museums is still heavily in the hands of partnerships that keep the power differential firmly in the hands of Western players. We must be careful not to continue to perform digital colonization of our cultures, even as we encourage participation across generations and encourage learning and monetization for our educators and content creators. Currently, there is no concerted effort to decentralize digitization efforts into specialized museums that cater to different facets of our pre-colonial, post-independence, and post-independence lives, including curating modern cultures, histories, scientific breakthroughs, etc. Here lies a wonderful opportunity to decolonize and devolve the archive by taking it back to communities, including our young people and their tech-savvy lives, ensuring that it is rendered into different formats that cater to every current and future generation, and by ensuring it is responding to the narratives of the people it derives its legitimacy from. The challenge and opportunity here is to work with a wide range of stakeholders, including the country scholars, to ensure that what is curated is contextually accurate and grounded in history and culture, and not the invented history and invented culture. Last but not least, current archives and collections of our cultural heritage, including antiquities, films, musics, etc., exist as representations and presentations of and to the wide gaze. Rendering these into digital formats, including the use of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, without decentralizing them from this gaze, will only create further versions of curated, invented, and fixed cultures, rooted in internalized racism, internalized misogyny, and further alienating us from who we were and who we are. This, in my view, is where the real work is, within the reality of decreased and decreasing funding and partnerships, and lack of clear funding and support from our own governments. This, again, is where the work is. I suppose the parting shot here is the final challenge, where to find the truth of our pre-colonial histories. If a vast number of them were destroyed in the manner of Benin City, if there are, and I believe there are, accounts, paintings, and other materials from this age still in the West, would the holders of these accounts, especially those that are in private collections, be willing to hand them back for our scholars, writers, musicians, historians, and truth tellers to disseminate them? And I'm very happy to hear that His Excellency, in his speech, started by saying that a large number of these that were in museums and archives were returned, was it earlier this year or last year, and handed over to the president. So that our scholars, writers, musicians, historians, and truth tellers can disseminate them, recounting our histories to build these archives and the possibilities of a more emancipated futures. Hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi njoo indeed. I thank you.
Is my mic working?
Yes, it is. I want the people at the yes, now I can hear it talking. Please tell me that you were tweeting, because there was so much wisdom. There were so many drops in that.
Never used a CD-ROM? No? So everyone has used a CD-ROM. Okay. So we'll go back to the floppy disks, or a mixtape, or an 8-track cassette for the car. The platforms on which we save our things are very transient. They're here today, they're gone tomorrow, unremembered in the future. So the call and the invitation to document has to be carried along with the assessment of what are we documenting on. Because as she said, the platforms that we're working on are not ours. I forgot to mention that my day job is running is running a platform called Paukwa, where we document stories all about Kenya. And it's hard work because a lot of those stories have disappeared. But all of them are online. We started off on social media. We have our own website. But now we also have physical, printed versions of the stories because once WordPress decides that it's not hosting that version anymore, they're gone. So let's be careful about where we are, keeping our heritage and our stories alive. I want us to move to the next panel, which is all about how is AI changing the way that we experience and protect our culture. How many people saw recently during the protest, there were these videos of Dedan Kimathi getting off his statue and walking in, Tomboya again stepping down from his statue and joining the people. How many people saw that? Did you get shocked, Kidogo? Like, it looks so real, right? It was so, the gate was on point, everything. So AI is not of tomorrow, it's of the now. And to lead us through that discussion, I'm going to invite our moderator, Aremu Anuluwapo, who's a computational linguist, particularly interested in advancing African languages in the evolving world of AI. Because if we don't have our language, then again, we are going to be reduced again. We're going to be erased once again. In addition, his work bridges the technical, operational, and cultural dimensions of artificial intelligence with a specialization in low resource and African languages. Welcome, Aremu.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here, and I am privileged and opportuned to participate in this conversation. My name is Aremu Anuluwapo, and I'm Nigerian, and I grew up in Lagos, but presently I'm doing my master's in computational linguistics, and I had my bachelor's in linguistics and African studies. So I would actually say I am the newer generation of professor because as you could imagine, I got to know here that he's also a linguist, but I think research in his days, it's still your days, professor, but the way they were doing research, I think would most likely be pure theoretical. But because in this new age where there is artificial intelligence and part of what I think, given some of the works I've done, is that if we actually want younger generations to embrace our culture, our language, one of the speakers was also talking about food. We need to adapt the usage of these things that exist in our culture into how younger generations exist in these new realities, because our reality as young people is very different from the realities that you guys had when you were our age. So not to waste so much time, I would invite some of those who would be panelists alongside while I moderate. So I would call on Gideon to come on stage, please. So the next I would call would be Vulan. And the last person who is going to be joining us on stage today would be Pearson. Yeah, thank you guys for doing this with me. And I really hope we would be able to educate everyone here from our realities and perspective and the kind of work we've done in our different spaces, and also able to learn from everyone here. So towards the end of this session, there would actually be an opportunity for everyone here to also contribute. So we would have a Q&A section about 5 to 7 minutes before the end of this. So to start, I would want each of you to probably give a 2-5 sentence background of yourself, just for the audience to be able to know who is speaking. Probably Gideon could start. Yeah, thank you, Villain.
Hi everyone. Very happy to be in Kenya. My favorite country in Africa. People can hear enough of that. I take every opportunity to tell everyone that I meet that. So my name is Fulani. I have a background in computer science, but I also have worked a lot as an artistic practitioner of the creative technologies, where we work in the intersection of science, AI, as well as art. I also have worked with KZN as a contemporary art gallery, which is the oldest contemporary gallery in South Africa, as well as in video game development. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, yeah.
Hi everyone. My name is Preston Atier. A data person, a story seeker, and a storyteller. I have about 15 years of experience in the data space on the enterprise side. I also work closely with Data Science Africa, an organization that basically provides platforms and resources for data practitioners to basically leverage data science technologies to sort of like make things work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so to start the conversation, I have a general question for each of you. Probably don't take more than 2 minutes to give us a feel of any AI tool you've used. It could be Claude, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, and what is particularly fascinating and shocking from a cultural or African heritage standpoint. Yeah, anyone of you could start.
Thanks, Gideon. So I think for me it's more of a shock because at this rate, I think if you compare us now and where we were maybe 2 or 3 years ago, many people didn't know about most LLMs and most tools and that you could use. I think now it's mostly general knowledge and stuff that I think with our audience as well, there's very few things that I could mention that they could surprise them as well. Most of the information is readily available on the net, like I said, which is much different than it was a few years ago. But so I'd like to just speak more on a tool that has, for me, caused a bit more of a concern in terms of its usage, and that kind of just shocked me, which is quite rare. I mean, when we, in this day and age where this AI is such prevalent. With the advent of also the video creation tools like Google View and things like that, where now they've come to a point where the fidelity is so good that, of course, we always knew that deepfakes were going to come. But we were looking at other issues that could arise from that. But I feel what's causing me a little bit of uneasiness is how they are used to perpetuate racial stereotypes. And of course, the first person that will suffer in instances like this are us, I'm trying to avoid using global south, us in Africa and countries such as that, where, of course, you find now that you will have these online platforms that exist that are kind of even channels. Then Instagram, you go on there and you see maybe a bunch of black women. It looks like they're talking to each other, but then of course it's like a normal conversation. But you'd find that the person that is creating that is not even. It's a man, heterosexual man from the West, and then the things that they are saying there, are very, like very bad stereotypes. Sort of like it's basically. So my worry is around how these tools are used for ethnic nationalism, as well as I think there's also becoming more prevalent used for like digital blackface now, which is a problem, right? So yeah. So that's
Okay.
my thing.
Yeah, Gideon.
So I think one of the tools that's given me the most unrest is Grok. Which is on Twitter. The challenge there is that we've seen it in real time, a tool kind of being made to be more right-wing, to be more extremist. And this is driven by capital, so you can see what happens when you have a particular worldview being shaped by money, right? And that, of course, it's worrying because we can't be able to predict how the rest of the world will develop, right? In terms of what shocked me, or from a cultural perspective, it's that AI is neither artificial nor intelligent. in the sense that it's material. You know, everything from the data centers, you need cobalt from African mines. From the data, you need data that we produce. You need labelers. You need people, right? And when you talk about intelligence, you need to provide structures for AI. You need to provide reward mechanisms. You need to provide a political and a social environment for this system to operate. So, you know, these are some of the things that you interact with this field and makes you interested, makes you concerned, makes you worried, but you also see that it's an emerging field. So there's an opportunity for us to turn the tide. Thank you.
Yeah, and Pearson.
I think the panelists already have brilliant example. Grok was what I was going for in the first place, but I feel like I'll go for my second sort of like tool that gave me the shivers, and it's Midjourney. So Midjourney is a photo/video generating platform that I think has been around for maybe over 6 years now. And I remember one of the first use cases I was using it is basically what we use a lot of recent AI tools for, that is just generating images and everything. I think one of the shivers is in the beginning, and I think to a large extent these days, there's a lot of hyper-realistic image results, and I think maybe that works for a given section of the population, but I feel like when you're trying to be generate authenticity, it's sort of like makes it quite difficult. I think in the beginning, Midjourney would take about 5 minutes to generate an image, so sometimes you'll forget about it, and you come back and 5 minutes later it's not what you're looking for, and you have to do it over and over again. And then when you go to the pro version, then you realize that it still takes 5 minutes, yes, because you have to iterate through stuff that you really don't need to see before you get what you really want to see. So I'll say Midjourney.
Yeah, I could imagine, like, thank you. So just for context here, also giving a couple of the research I've done, and also like even from research from big techs and everyone, for AI tools to be really good, it is not just the compute, which is the algorithms and machine learning techniques. AI most of the time are as good as the data that they are used for the training. And the understanding of some research is that data is going to play too, but the conversation that I think people are not also looking at is that probably Western data being used to train these models are going to play too. And the next place newer data are going to come from would majorly be the global south. Because when you take models like ChatGPT or Gemini, whatnot, they have high agency for Western content, while African content and most global south content are not there. So probably to also scale them, for them to have newer ideas and newer knowledge, data would surely come from this continent. And we need to start, bringing frameworks on first how to protect Africans in relation to intellectual property. I will come to you, Gideon. And also how to protect creatives, because I think there are a lot of Gen Zs here. I would maybe also want to identify as one. We take our TikTok, that's content. You go on Twitter, you tweet something, you say things in your local language. These things are being scraped to train models. Yeah, so the question then would be, we have an understanding that part of the newer data that will be used to advance the knowledge this AI would have is going to come from our continent. What are the framework, Gideon, do you think could be put in place to protect intellectual property more broadly, and also probably from the space of licenses and whatnot?
Thank you. So there's a number of things that I can say about that. The first is we have the AFCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So essentially it's all of the African countries have come together and they want to create a borderless environment for trade. And they have a protocol, which is the Intellectual Property Protocol, that does provide for how data can be stored. So how data will be stored, where it's stored, And I think this is so one of the things that will provide us as a continent the ability to negotiate. Because if it's on a country-by-country basis, having a negotiation with Microsoft or having a negotiation with Alphabet, it's difficult. But continentally, it becomes a little bit easier because then we have some bargaining power. So first, I'd suggest that a continental convergence in terms of the approaches, even if it's not in terms of the regulations. So a convergence in terms of the philosophies is really important. Secondly, when you look at our national data laws, there's a huge focus on PII, which is personal information, right? But we don't have a strong focus on cultural, communal information. This is collective data rights. And that's essential. And probably one of the challenges is they say, you know, how do we enforce? Who do we negotiate with? But that's the role of the government. The government is supposed to protect all the different groups that exist within the state, right? So I think even in terms of national data laws, a focus on collective data rights and community cultural rights is important. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And piercing from a pure data perspective, how do you think the Global South, from also a cultural heritage data standpoint, could participate while, you know, probably governments and other agencies are also working on frameworks that could protect some of this data being generated from the continent?
Okay, I think I'm going to talk about a few examples of projects that are being done in the African continent. And one of them is Masakane. Masakane is South Africa, let me say Africa-based. I saw Vukosi was one of the panelists today, and I think Vukosi could speak more about, Marivate could speak more about Masakane. And Masakane is basically inter-Africa translation project that allows us to sort of like translate African languages between each other. And I think that's a very brilliant project in the context of just Africans taking charge of just making sure that in a sense their data is used the way they want it to be used. But also at the same time, I'm sort of like using language as a proxy for culture. That might not necessarily apply in all contexts and to everybody, but I feel like the fact that Africans are already playing in this space is also very important. I'm also going to flag out Sandbird AI in Uganda that does like audio project, Uganda language audio projects, essentially for like audio calls, those random audio calls that you get from businesses. Sandbird has a brilliant sort of like model in place. I've had the pleasure of just working with them once in a while, and I think I like the work they're doing there. But also recently, one of my other close friends from Data Science Africa, Dr. Lilian Wanzare from Asenia University, has now worked on an AI translation mechanism for Kenya Sign Language model. And I think that's the most interesting thing that I've seen this year. So I feel like it requires a lot of practice and play from the people within this context in order to sort of like chart the path that they want their data to take and their culture to take. I think more than anything, one of the things that I would, and I'm so happy that when I walked in, there was a lot of students from universities, and I think what I would just encourage those students is those ideas that you have about how you want to use LLM or whichever AI model, computer vision, reinforcement learning and whatever other technology, I think that is literally sort of like the sense of preservation. But then as I close out, I think one of the most important things is we really don't do a good job as a continent in building infrastructure that's required for building models or working in the technology space. One of the craziest things is it costs 60% more for Africans to access infrastructure than, let's say, Western countries. And this becomes very expensive because if you consider some of these ChatGPT and Grok are models that are based on high supercomputers that themselves are running about, 1 trillion teraflops per second. This is really expensive. If we are really going to play on this, it's not just about, decoding this data and just making this data available. It also involves moving away from building malls, and I hate to say this, South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria, there are way too many malls. I feel like this money could be spent in sort of like building infrastructure, and I feel like to a large extent, given my experience, I would be able to have a discussion why it gets better rate of return than a mall.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you for, mentioning Masakani. So I'm also a member of Masakani, and if Masakani is to be a research lab on the continent, arguably it is going to be the most productive lab that has produced more natural language processing related research on several African languages. And, a lot of good work are being done there. And just to also give accolades to Kenya, Masakani was actually being registered in Kilifi in Kenya, probably arguably because there are good laws for people to just be able to easily register companies and all those. So I will go to Valley now. How do you think more visibility of heritage-related work, cultural-related work could be enhanced, and how do the ordinary person, just participate in ensuring they also play a role? Because in the end, anyone with the internet could actually play a role in this AI world we are all living in. But some people are more advantaged than others, but while there are challenges, there are still opportunities in challenges. And how do you think young people could give themselves more visibility and push their work out there for them to also maybe either earn or make themselves more popular and,
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's a good question to ask someone who's never earned a cent from working in this space, especially in the intersection of AI and art. Because primarily my interest was very much on being a provocateur in the space, existing in that white-hot area of actually pushing and asking pertinent questions that necessarily governments will not ask, nor scientists will not ask, because they are on very set guidelines. They need to achieve certain things that only artists are unbridled with, So speaking to what you are saying, I think that's also one of the things that could motivate, as you mentioned, people who are trying to get into the space of trying to use the technologies that we have to either preserve culture or to extend their practice or to ask certain questions. Because we have, like I said, we have systems that are kind of falling away now, that we have used for many years, whether they are government-based, like policy, or they are, even in academia as well. There's a reason why the Masakanes, RAL Lab, all these things had to be started outside of traditional university systems because they were taking too long to catch up to the technology advancements. So I would say, in terms of young people want to maybe have more to have their work seen or to have a stronger voice, would not be necessarily to currently use the tools that are available, because like you said, they're available for everyone. I think Africa is uniquely positioned to actually have things that are developed on the continent using something that is not necessarily available in the global north. Things like, of course, our indigenous knowledge systems and how we have always gathered information, which is it's a different thing. Our knowledge systems are more communal. Africa has never valued patents as much as the West for particular reasons. And there's a reason sometimes those things are, the shared knowledge works, those systems in some instances work better, especially in the age of AI, where now it's becoming even more trickier to credit copyright. So who owns what? How do you attribute anything to anyone right now? At the point where now you have even GAN networks, where you have even AI training other AIs. We are moving further and further and further and further away even from any ownership of any sort. So maybe it's time we delve more into our knowledge systems and what we've had all along for thousands of years, which are distinctly different from the frameworks of the West, incorporating that, or just fully embracing those ways of thought to achieve newer ways of interacting with the current status quo. I would also go one step further in terms of what really I feel we need to be heading towards if someone is interested maybe in exploring something new out of this whole space. There are experts working now on almost every subfield of AI research, development, and everything. But there isn't a lot of work working on the proof of humanness. Now, more than ever, we need to know that person that we are talking to on the phone is a human being. So this is where, research for something like things like zero-knowledge protocols, things like that can prove humanness. These are things we actually now need to go back and find systems that can, help us find the humanness in a world that's overwhelmingly becoming more and more and more arbitrary. So I think that's an interesting space for younger people to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I actually think you raised a couple of super important points, especially around patents, ownership, whatnot. And as you were speaking, I remember this scenario of the China versus the US, when this lab in China, the name is my thoughts now, came with this model that was performing way better than ChatGPT and the likes of the Western models. And as everything was being, as everything was DeepSeek, yeah. Africa was, or even majority of the global South was not even in the conversation. And it took me back to the late 800s, the early 1960s, 1950s, of extraction and all that, and we not owning our narrative, we not, participating fully in what is going to be the new world order. And of course, we have to also probably give credence to our reality that, we have deficits of infrastructure, like you said. I am not super sure they are up to 1,100 NVIDIA models on this continent. And that is just the truth, because for you to be able to compete with AI, for you to be able to properly compete, you need models. You have to burn money. And I would like to ask how you think we could better position in that limelight, Pearson, in relation to ownership of our content, our heritage, and how we could refine some of this narrative and push our own narrative and tell our story as generally from Global South and Africans. Yeah, Pearson, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a question. I think there are merits and demerits to the aspect that we've not necessarily been a part of the conversations on what AI models look like. I think I could speak about the merits. The demerits, I think, is very clear to everyone. But I think the merits here is we can literally see several trains derailing, and we can now use that as a cautionary tale on the African sense to decide this is not something that we want to be a part of. One of the things that I think that was said yesterday in the opening session is a quote, I don't remember from who, that basically captures the fact that African history has mostly been in the people, in oral tradition. And I think there is a very good opportunity in that sense, because as much as we necessarily don't have a lot of our, let me say, data in the systems that this work, it allows our government, our institutions to be able to, first of all, have the policies in place to make sure that this is not the case. There's a lot of concern of, as much as Kenya, in its case, has a Data Protection Act, and I think the same thing could be said about South Africa. There's a lot of data centers that essentially host Kenya and South Africa, and I think most of African countries, data outside the continent. I think more than anything, it's very important that we establish and we ask that our institutions establish these data centers. The other thing that I also think is quite worrying is we don't have a lot of government investment in the infrastructure space. This is one of those times where someone probably speaks a bit positively about China, but China has done an incredible job of just using their military funding to sort of like ensure that there's a lot of infrastructure for the commercial sector to work with. I think you can say a lot of things about that, but I think in the Kenyan space and a lot of the African space, there's a lot of opportunity for us to copy that good work to make sure that universities, students, and institutions can take advantage of this. When it comes to data collections, I think we exist in the reality where residual income is a big determinant of what you do as a passion, and therefore data collection in itself is not something that is really high paying. So it's basically require a lot of the philanthropy dollars and Kenya shillings and Naira and Rand to be invested to ensure that these data sets is also available. But then I think there's a few projects that I've seen of just basically capturing beat the music, the traditional music sense, capturing stories from like our grandparents and the past histories, capturing different sounds and what they meant in the different culture that I think should be able to come back and play in this space when the infrastructure is in place. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is investing in infrastructure is really not optional if you really want to play in this space. There is no shortcut around this. The other thing is IP, and I think he's right here to sort of like basically participate in those conversations. But finally, once all that is in place, it's really incumbent in all of us to just make sure that we play our own role to codify and just bring this data into, this data, make this data available. I'm going to take a dig at social media content and photos on the hyperrealism sense, and I don't think that is going to in any way benefit us as a form of data collection.
Yeah, thanks. So lastly, before we go to the Q&A, Gideon, I would want to minimally set you up. And, Pearson was actually just talking about like data collection and how it has been going on the continent. And I also think Professor Vokosi, like you were mentioning the other time, has also been playing a huge role in this space of ensuring a lot of the newer generation of models have African languages and they can maybe not speak, because I'm a linguist and I'm trying not to use the wrong words, but probably from a statistical standpoint, they could compute and, try to frame the syntactic patterns of African languages and represent them well in a coherent manner to humans. But particularly, there was also this incident with one of the big techs and Kenyan employees where they wanted them to filter some of their reinforcement learning, So reinforcement learning is a technique of machine learning, just for the audience, where you try to have people at the back end of things and this sort of like rate what the model is producing, if it is toxic or not. So if it is toxic, they rate it down, so the content gets deprioritized and gets lower statistical score, so it doesn't pop up to humans. But the conversation was then around a lot of the workers that did that were Kenyans. The first issue was they were not fairly compensated. So I would really love your thoughts around compensation more broadly from an IP legal standpoint. And also, the level of toxic content they were exposed to, there was not a provision for how they would be detoxicated of the exposure they had. What do you think could also be like, probably what government could be doing, probably what NGOs could be doing to ensure probably, first of all, on compensation, then also the after effect of some of these contents that not just Africans, anybody from any part of the world could ensure like we are doing things the right way, just before we go to Q&A.
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that it's a philosophical question, right? Fundamentally, we have to accept that people matter, right? And once we accept that, then everything builds up upon that. If we protect the people, if we make sure that, okay, there are policies in place that help them get, if it's counseling, therapy after doing such work, if it's necessary for this work to be done by human beings, the kind of compensation is also a difficult question, because it's very easy to take advantage of people simply because a dollar is a dollar there, but it's different once you take it across a few borders. So I'd hesitate to limit it just to money, but I think it's also a philosophical thing, you know? How are we treating people? How are we treating their ideas? How are we treating the environment within which these ideas are expressed? Yeah? And this comes on the back of centuries of extractivism. You know, we form part of a continent that has suffered a lot of extraction in terms of minerals, in terms of people, in terms now of our human capital. And if we don't turn the tide on this, then this is just going to be perpetuated, right? And I think that the same challenges we have in other forms of governance, we can't avoid them here, right? We can't avoid issues of governance even in this space of technology. So, which is why I believe that at a fundamental point, it's about putting people at the forefront and making sure that our systems protect the people.
Yeah. Thank you. So I would be taking 2 to 3 questions from the audience just because of time. So if anyone has, yeah, okay, 1, okay, 2, okay, then, okay, I have 3 people. Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I'm going to zone in on a very focused part of heritage and digital, and maybe you can recommend some tools. Working in the museum space and looking at museum collections in the up there and down here, or left and right. We have 2 problems, right? So we have one problem of mistakes. Metadata is incorrect. And then on the continent, we have a problem of it's not digitized. And if it's digitized, it's not digitized with the metadata. And if it is digitized with the metadata, it's not findable. All right, so basically, you know, I remember in the 90s when museums digitized, all the funding was digitized. So everyone's digitized all this stuff. But you still can't find it, right? Because it sits on some website that's now obsolete and blah, blah, blah. And nothing is interoperable, it seems. So we have a real problem because even if we have the collections, they are miscategorized or they're not, we can't find them, even if we have the knowledge. So that's of people who are not with us anymore. So I'm just wondering, in your work with AI or any digital tools, whether you've encountered ways of addressing this issue quite practically. Because we don't have enough data to do training models for the AI. We seem to be in this circle. And so if we have museum collections, for example, and even now I speak to museums and they're like, oh, we're gonna digitize. I'm like, for what? Like, just scanning a bunch of stuff is not really gonna do anything for anybody. Yeah, so if you could maybe advise on that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, anyone in 1 minute, please, because of time.
Sorry. So first of all, thank you. And it's true. This is it's a double-edged sword, right? You have these 2 like 2 different heads of a snake. Yeah. I think one of the most important things is attaching a value to it. Yeah, because if you look at museums, if you look at the tourist industry in most of Europe, most of North America, it's driven to a large extent by museums, and part of their tax money does go towards funding that, and you do have a lot of financing that goes from the commons towards financing this. And it's one of the things that gets cut kind of quickly when people are looking for things to cut. But if you look at other countries, we struggle with this. And if we can be able to strategize in terms of how the capital flows, not just towards things that are tangible, but also towards these intangibles, and to have these structures in place to forestall these problems that you're talking about, we can have a solution, but it won't be an instant solution. It's something which requires time. As we had earlier, we're just now getting the data from the British government regarding things that happened, over 50 years ago. So we can't just turn around and say, okay, look, we'll be able to get all of the data, get it all annotated, get it all searchable, get all of the context, do all that stuff within the next 3 years. It's impossible. But what we can do is be able to start putting in place mechanisms that make sure that, yes, we have policies in place for this data, we have policies in place for how this data will be handled, we have rules and regulations for how this data will be used, so that as the capital begins to flow in, we can know what we're doing with it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Let me add something. I think one of the most underrated victories of the internet is the capture mechanism. And capture was used successfully by the New York Times to digitize their newspapers over a long period of time. I think that is probably one of the tools and affiliates that you can be able to look at. But then you can also look at one of those resources that, unfortunately, it's very unfortunate that I'm saying resources, but I find graduate students are very unlimited. So you can use them to digitize and to sort of like fix your metadata. But also at the same time, I think there is a key benefit to graduate students of just going through their studies, working on important work, and just writing brilliant papers.
Yeah, just before we go to the second question, the only addition I would like to do to that is probably we should encourage more data sharing, even if it is on a national level. Because, for example, this is a national museum. Probably there's another national museum in Kivu or anywhere. And I'm not so sure how much information is being transferred between these two and duplicates being, reduced. Yeah, probably that could also help. And I think that is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits in relation to the kind of work you just explained. So the second question, sir.
Thank you, and thank you, guys. That's a very nice discussion. My name is Mutukwa Moindi, founder director, Akamba Cultural Center and Museum. In the Kamba Society, we believe in short stories. I used to have a bicycle, and one time, the dogs barked so much that I had to take it to a neighbor who had a stone house to give the bicycle for me. Come the day of the salary, and I needed to ride 50 kilometers to collect my salary. The guy was not there, he had traveled. And so for 3 days, I suffered because I could not access my bicycle. And the salary was a whopping 600. And you understand the pressure with a new girlfriend and all that. Now, we are talking of digitizing. We are keeping things out there in digital space. Google, Facebook, Twitter. Now, if Google wakes up and goes on a journey like that rich guy, how many of you will be jobless? Because you can't access Google, you can't access Facebook, you can't access Twitter. It is somewhere you don't know. How many of you know the location of the engine that Google uses for Africa, for example? If you go there, you can say, please remove my stuff. I no longer need your services. Nobody. Or if we know, there are very few people. So that has been my constant worry, that we will wake up one day and find Google is no more. Going by what happened last year, my daughter woke me up crying, saying, Dad, wake up, my Instagram page has been stolen. I said, what? Who stole it? I don't know, please, take me a picture. I want to write this, they're asking me this. And then I said, all these things we keep online, if they disappear, what will happen? You will get the agony of my bicycle. Thank you.
Thanks. Just before we answer the question, could we take the last question so we could answer together? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. So we would answer the two. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
afternoon.
My name is Nalzeti from the African Women's Orchestra. There is a point in time when you say that it's gotten to a point where we need AI tools that are specific to Africa and not necessarily to the world, because then we'll be able to keep our perfect trail of our languages, our cultural recipes, just our heritage in the indigenous languages, which I find, of course, even when we say we have indigenous languages on Google, there's sometimes when there's like mispronunciations or like there's just they give the wrong meanings to words basically. But then you also write on that there is need for a balance. The AI tools that are also meant for like the global stage, because even as we are preserving our heritage as Africans, we are trying to integrate. As an example is Connect UK, Kenya Nairobi, the UK Kenya Connect. So how then would you say would be the perfect balance to ensure that we are given prominence still, or we're given a stage, a voice, a place, but then at the same time we are also integrating and giving other people the opportunity and the stage to be with us, like so that the exchange flow is seamless.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So if anyone wants to answer any of the question, you have just 1 minute because we are out of time. Yeah, just 1 minute, please. So I'm sorry, but we're out of time.
I think I can take a stab at both questions. I kind of find them very related. And thank you so much, sir, for your question. I believe what we've spoken about today is sort of like taking ownership of our own digitization. I think your concerns comes from the key assumption that the structures in place stay. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I feel like even without a lot of action, eventually, just because the universe always chases a bit of a balance, there is sort of like a phoenix that rises from Africa and just establishes mechanisms that ensures that data is stored. At the same time, sir, we have to recognize that we are becoming more and more global citizens. You have your niece in Australia, you have your friend in XYZ place, and it's very difficult for us to have sort of like a cultural center in Kisumu to serve all these people who want to appreciate their culture. I think that is sort of like the purpose that basically digitization sort of serves. I think when it comes to sort of like the reliance of infrastructure, internet infrastructure, as somebody who's been in this space for 15 years, and I've known people who've been in this space for much, much longer, there's a lot of robustness that has actually come in this place. Closer home, we can speak about M-Pesa. When's the last time that you heard that there was a major M-Pesa outage? And I feel like we've sort of like elevated money to a different class in Kenya, whereby if M-Pesa went down even once, there would be more panic than, let's say, our cultural relics. And please forgive me for that comparison. At the same time, thank you so much for your question. And I think it also sort of picks up what I just said of just finding a good balance. I think what is really necessary here is there's obviously a lot that needs to be done. And because there's a lot that needs to be done, we need to, as much as possible, move away from basically sharing our ideas into the pool of what needs to be done, but also coming in with our djembes and shockers and also participating in what needs to be done. I feel like a lot of the skills that is required in building AI infrastructure or basically building AI models requires consultants who have deep knowledge in several things. I have a lot of experience of just using consultants just to make sure that I'm not straying away from how things should be the case. And I believe that's a balance that a forum and a symposium such as this helps us establish. So I think specifically to the question of sometimes definitionally some of the things are astray, I believe expecting 100% accuracy of anything is really, really impossible. This morning I was having a chat with my sister and we were not agreeing about something, and then she sent me one of those messages. You know, the lady's always right. And I think other than my sister and her quote of the lady's always right, there is no other facet that I know that is actually true. Thank you so much. Thank you for the response. Fortunately, he has used the time of everyone here. So I would say a big thank you to everyone.
And I really hope you have been able to learn, and we have also been able to learn from you through those questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panel. You've seen their faces. You can find them during lunch. Have a seat with them, have a discussion about the things that couldn't be asked in the plenary. I'd like us to move to our next session, which is a conversation between Mukami Kowino, who is the Deputy Country Director for the British Council here in Kenya, and Jamil Verji, who he is the founder and CEO of City Blue Hotels, which is a partner here in providing accommodation for many of our guests who have come out from outside of Kenya. So please give him a warm welcome. And Mukami will tell us which hat he happens to be wearing, because yes.
He's wearing many hats. Good afternoon, everybody. I know we are standing between you and your food, so we will make sure that this will be short and sweet. Thank you for being here. As you heard, my name is Mukami Kowino. I work at the British Council. I have the privilege of having a conversation with Jamil Verji. Jamil, you wear many hats. You are the founder CEO of City Blue. You have been a board member advising Queen of Baganda. You are advising the chair and the curator of the Asian African Heritage Gallery. There is so much. Please share more with the people. All these, you contain multitudes. Please do break it down for us. No? Can we get his mic working?
Yep, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And firstly, thank you very much to the British Council for inviting me to speak today. It's actually a great honor for me to be here, and also to represent primarily the element of the National Museums of Kenya's gallery dedicated to the Asian African history, which I think we'll be talking about more. But to answer your question, yes, I am a British Kenyan living in Nairobi, very engaged with a business which was founded in Rwanda, and then Uganda, and then Kenya, and now Tanzania some years ago under the City Blue brand. But the key element of our African-born business is the DNA of our brand is African-born, and therefore we celebrate the diversity that is Africa. And part of that celebration is very much being here today and being able to engage in the local cultures that we operate in. And so in Uganda, I was on the board of the Nabagareka Development Foundation, which promoted the culture of the Buganda Kingdom. And here in Kenya, I've been very privileged to be involved with the National Museums of Kenya with this gallery.
Thank you. Thank you. We are connected now. So we are at the National Museum. So we would like to tell you more about an exhibition that is currently being set up. It's halfway done. It's available for people to have a look at it. But please, we share some interesting histories between Kenyan Indians and the rest of Kenyans, but you are Kenyans as well. Tribe 44 is how we like to call you, as the Constitution strongly cements your identity. Please, could you tell our audience more about this installation?
So this predates my time in being about 20-odd years ago, when a very important dedicated space within the gallery was provided to a team of curators to set up a dedicated identity for the Indian Kenyan community or the Asian African community within this space. It was President Kibaki who commissioned it, and a curator who unfortunately recently passed away, Firoz Naroji, who many of us worked very closely with, was engaged as the curator to effectively author this gallery. Which is really split into three areas. One is on the social heritage side, one is on the labor heritage side, and one is on the intellectual heritage side. All three very, very key elements of the community's history in East Africa. But this history goes back several thousands of years. It didn't happen just at the time of the railways. It happened because of trade between the Indian subcontinent and across the Indian Ocean over a significant period of time. But it was brought to life, let's say, by a very large number of Indian laborers coming in the turn, or just before the turn of the last century, to build the railway, although trading had happened prior to that. And subsequently, generation after generation of Indians have become part of this country. They have nowhere else. This is their home. They wear the Kenyan flag on their wrist. They sing the national anthem. They have been part of this country for way longer than a lot of people fully understand. And today, all those generations later, it is their identity. Are they that this gallery, in many ways, questions? Are they Indian Kenyans? Are they African Asians? Are they still feeling more Indian, or are they feeling more Kenyan? And I think today it's very clear that the contribution of these people to society in Kenya across broadcasting, media, sport, trade, business, politics has made them a very significant community and the 44th tribe.
Thank you. So if I could just by a show of hands see how many people at any point of your life done a tour of the museum. Great. That is, I feel like more than 90% of the people who are here. And so this is a reason for you to go in, refresh your memory, and then also just get to see a new side to our story as Kenyans. Jamil, I've seen from the gallery, you have been able to document from as far back as 2300 BC. A lot of Kenyans and people who've been to the gallery, I think mainly think that this relationship started only with the foreign exchange program we all experienced called colonialism, but it started a bit further. So could you just share around the experience of being able to document that and just a hint of what people can get to see when they visit the gallery?
Sure. So when you walk around the gallery, and we would love and encourage everybody to get a chance, hopefully for a sneak preview, and then obviously when it opens properly, one will see the dhow that a lot of the Indians arrived in, the small boats that they traveled in across the Indian Ocean. Many of the Indian Kenyans who you will know, it will be their forefathers, including ours. Then you'll see the map to demonstrate the proximity across the Indian Ocean of East Africa and West India, and why so many of the Indian Kenyans emanate from Punjab or Gujarat or the areas of India that are proximate, and why they came. You'll see the replica of the railway that was built, and the tracks, and the statistics around how many Indian Kenyans unfortunately perished in building the tracks through Savo and across Kenya, because they were the laborers, they were building the railways, and out of 30,000, about 3,000 were killed, mainly by the lions of Savo. And then you'll learn about the merchants and how some of them then became civil rights activists involved in Kenya's freedom fighting and independence movement. A lot of those stories are very well documented here as well, which sometimes are not so well known and are not in the curriculum of the country. And then, of course, some of the famous sporting heroes and educationalists who've all come from Asian ethnic backgrounds, who've contributed and are very much part of Kenya today.
Thank you. So, some years back, we had, I'll call it come to Jesus moment as Kenyans, when some brave Kenyans did a documentary, The Making of a Nation, that opened our eyes to very many things that we thought the story was based on certain foundations, and they informed us that those foundations we thought were actually not the ones. We learned more around the true role of different Kenyans in the fight for independence, in the making of the nation to where we are. And we got to learn about Kenyans like Pio Gama Pinto, who supported this country in many other ways. But we have prominent Kenyans from the Indian community who have done a lot for this country in the areas that you've talked about, in sports, patriotism, trade. I know those who did 844. Malkiat Singh was an author that gave many people nightmares because assignment was from Book X by Malkiat Singh. I can see them. I can see them in the audience. But then we have MP Shah. We have currently Manu Chandaria. Please, could you share more around these amazing Kenyans and why we need to learn more about our history and our current, the people who are contributing to making this nation great?
Sure, thank you. I think it's very important that everybody knows about 1923, because 1923 was a very important moment where various members of the Indian Kenyan community, who were resisting some of the elements of the colonial rule, even though they were, in many cases, significant merchants themselves and dealing with the British, they were resisting elements of what the British were imposing. So many of them went together to London and advocated at the House of Lords in what then became known as the Devonshire Declaration, which was, Lord Devonshire was the colonial secretary at the time. And if we read the history, and it's all in the gallery, so I'm not going to go into detail now, but it effectively explains that that moment changed Kenya's history from becoming what could have become an apartheid country, just as South Africa was for many, many more years beyond Kenya's independence. I mean, South Africa's independence happened much later. So as a result of that movement, and what was that really about? It was about asserting the same rights for the Indian Kenyans and the indigenous African Kenyans as the English, the British. So it was an important moment in Kenya's history. And I think the likes of Desai, Jivanji, actually my great-grandfather, Hussein Sulaiman and others, were on that trip. They went to London together. And they came back with the first moment, perhaps, where the colonial powers at the time across many countries began to realize that a civil rights movement based on social activism, patriotism, of people who really, really wanted something without having to fight aggressively for it was beginning to be the way to change things. And that subsequently happened and panned out many years later in India, Pakistan, and what then became Pakistan and elsewhere. Jinnah, who became the first prime minister of Pakistan, was on that same trip. And I think this also takes us back to what was happening at that time. I mean, the main currency in Kenya at the time was the rupee. The trade was between Indians and Africans, very much more than we perhaps even realize. And this all overlapped because a lot of the Indians who were in Kenya had come from being part of the British Indian Empire for a very long time too. So they could speak English, they could speak Swahili, they could speak Gujarati, they could speak in all the different languages to communicate well and be able to get their points across.
Thank you. So as we come to the end, I will not really ask you to ask questions because I can see people throwing me dagger eyes. It's really not safe to stand between people and their sustenance. But you have a quote from Senior Counsel that you would like to read. And I welcome you and encourage you to have a chat with Jamil. He's around. Our delegates who are at City Blue, you get to see who is the owner, the CEO. It's an amazing place. For the rest, visit. But I'll let you have the final word.
Thank you. So, I don't think I could be sitting here without referencing Feroz Naroji, the curator of this gallery. And I just wanted to quote from his book, Conserving the Intangible, on the African-Asian identity. And what he said is, self-definition of the changed identity was the principal need. The need arose from a century of colonial labeling that was racial, that carried derogatory connotations, that was discriminatory, and that was perpetuated. After independence, the community had been erased from the primary and secondary school curricula and from university areas of study and research. No Kenyan students learned of the story of the presence of this active group. These factors led to an intensive debate within the African-Asian community between 1997 and 1999, seeking clarity, unity, and organization, and community education. The debate gained from the National Museums of Kenya, policy of inclusiveness and the conceptual, technical, and logistical support that was extended to it by the National Museums of Kenya. So a big hand to the National Museums of Kenya, and please visit the gallery when you get a chance.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to us. And please, side chat Jamil while you're here. Back to you.
Thank you so much. We are all Kenyans, and we don't know it until you leave this country. Have you stepped outside of the country and then you're like, oh, I'm really Kenyan, because of what you miss, what you know? Okay, sorry, I was getting a housekeeping note. It was about your lunch, so I'm sure you'll be happy. We're going to break now for lunch. We're going to exit out of here, this gate, walk round, down, follow the path all the way round to the restaurant that's right above the pillars, right? So you continue just walking down all the way around. As you enter the restaurant, you'll be given, or as you access the restaurant, I think you'll get a voucher. So please make sure that you get a voucher, which will allow you to access a meal and a drink. Okay. With that, I'm going to close this session. I'm going to say goodbye to our online audience until 2:15, which is when we will congregate back here. Yeah, so have those conversations, enjoy lunch, and I would like finally to ask all the people who spoke this morning, the panelists, please just come down here. We need to have a small word with you. Thank you. See you at 2:15.
Yizo.